Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Katie Walkich, the Sales and Marketing Coordinator here at KRI Systems. And today we're going to be talking about automating some supplier portals. There's definitely a lot of aspects that go into this. Just some of them that we're going to touch on today is things like PO Acknowledge, ASN, AP automation, and vendor onboarding. Joining me today, I've got a few people here. We've got Doug Pulaski, the Director of Sales and Marketing. We have Sumant Prasad, our Chief Technology Officer. And we have Jeremy Stowe, the Product Manager for the supplier portals. Before we get started, just so you know, there is a questions box on your right-hand side of your screen, so please send those in at any time. We might answer them then, or we'll answer them at the very end. So with that, I will turn it over to Doug.
Katie, thank you, and everyone that is attending this webinar. Thank you for taking your valuable time, making a decision to review and determine potential fit between KRI's, our software solution, and I should really say solutions. We have a number of applications, and your business requirements, whether it's near term or into the future. And what I'm going to do is really focus on the demonstration portion. The slide deck, we're going to send all the registrants and all the attendees, but it is helpful for me to review some background information on KRI's, the way we fit into the J.D. Edwards marketplace and how we're positioned, some of our customers. In fact, we're going to have a case study review of one of our J.D. Edwards Enterprise One customers, Amway. So with that, I'm going to go through the slides, but I'm going to try to keep it limited so that I can get right to the demonstration portion. So first off, KRI's. We're located in Aurora, Illinois. We are a pure software company. We're not a JDE service company with doing part-time software solutions. We're 100% software. We've been working in the J.D. Edwards space, what I call adding value to J.D. Edwards, filling in the white space where J.D. Edwards functionality out of the box lacks to improve business processes. To a large degree, we work on the commerce payment side of J.D. Edwards. That's not today's webinar. That's focused on sales orders and customer service reps, call center folks dealing with accounts receivable, and that's our e-commerce and our easy pay to enable credit card, ACH functionality with, say, online bill pay or an e-commerce storefront. We're going to be focusing on the other side of the supply chain, dealing with accounts payable, dealing with purchase orders, OP transactions in J.D. Edwards, focused instead of customers, like on the commerce side, suppliers and your vendors within the address book. And we have a number of products. We're going to highlight certain ones today, but I'll overview predominantly the VSS, as Katie mentioned, that area of functionality focused on PO management, ASN, and paperless invoice matching. And I shouldn't say paperless. We do have OCR functionality. So as an example, if the vendor wanted to submit a PDF, we can work with that. We do many other custom projects. The reason we do custom projects for many JDE companies, whether it's an item master onboarding or a vendor onboarding or an HR ESS, is because we're a different type of software company. We're not a Java, .NET, C#. We're not a programming language software company that creates a deliverable. We're a platform software company. We first created a platform, and then we built applications on top of it. Our predominant focus, our practice area, is the sell side, the commerce side, and the buy side, the spend side, which we're going to be focusing on today. There's a representation of just some of our customer base. These are all E1 customers that we're working with. We work with Fortune Fortune 500 companies, like obviously Chevron, Yum. We went live with Yum, which is the 1997 Pepsi spinoff of KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. And they went live and they rated the project in the top 5 of hundreds and hundreds of projects that they've done over the years. Very strategic. Franchisees, sales, 15,000 franchisees worldwide, sales reporting, and create invoice and pay invoice. But Amway is the one case study we're going to highlight in terms of our deliverable, the business case, the metrics, and let's get right to that. People implement a supplier portal to improve business processes and achieve efficiencies. And I don't like reading bullet points, but you can see with Amway, 100% supplier compliance for order acknowledgement. And in terms of reports and metrics, just, an overall increase in working with their suppliers and suppliers working with them in an optimal manner. And what I'm going to do actually with Amway is, let me very quickly go to Google and just say Amway supplier portal. So I do a Google search, and this is all public information. But seeing how I was on that Amway slide, you folks might find this very interesting. Amway is a $9 billion company. That's what their revenues were in 2017. China, Asia is a huge market, obviously the U.S. But when they get into this procurement portal, the vendor self-service, this is it right here, talking about the efficiencies and even simple things. You notice that quick payment? They said during the course of the project, you know what? So many vendors are interested in getting paid. So let's just do a quick link here. They're showing their status codes representing the invoice payment from J.D. Edwards, and a user doesn't even have to log in. A PO number, an invoice number, and they can see the status right there. But if we look back at the Amway portal, we have a lot of documentation. Now, this is an interesting point here because we're going to show use case scenarios. In order to get 100% supplier compliance, that probably 20-80 rule applies, with 20% of your suppliers being real strategic, where they need to go into like PO acknowledgement and see all of the detail. And Amway, by the way, great 2-3 minute tutorials on everything, but you see what's going on there. And obviously, metrics is very important. So their suppliers log right into, and you see Oracle Business Intelligence. So if you come back and you look at how Amway, now keep in mind, we're real-time integrated. This is how most companies want their performance metrics to be associated. So supplier on time, this is right off, and this is explaining to the suppliers. We even have another scorecarding detail that Amway created for their suppliers for scorecarding that gets into the detailed metrics. But I very briefly, within the course of that PowerPoint, wanted to show the Amway example. A lot of people, like I said, find that site interesting to review. I talked about our platform. Our platform differentiates ourselves, just like you bought J.D. Edwards because everybody reviewed the architecture of J.D. Edwards with the tools version working against the application version. Everything J.D. Edwards applications is based on the tools version of J.D. Edwards, Cafe One or whatever, dealing with object management workbench so you can do your customs. That's the advantage. And Lyle talks about J.D. Edwards and the advantages with the platform, expanding out to REST APIs and the GUI customizations that you're seeing now. That's what we have. We have a platform, and it's a service-oriented platform. We have 400 services. As a matter of fact, the OCR functionality is one of our services, like, you know, ODBC and JD Edwards integration, business function, Z-file. When we do logic, we do it in a canvas. When we do workflow, we're doing that in a canvas. So a voucher to invoice might have to go through a workflow. It's just a canvas, drag and drop, working with widgets. This is the web part representing the GUI. I'm going to be demonstrating from a laptop, but we use responsive design to form factor to smartphone devices, Android and iOS. We even have a native app component. It's a very, very modern architecture. I'm not going to, there's another example of our workflow, and here is our architecture, layered. So you have our integration against the business system layer, and you know what, I got our Chief Technology Officer here. Suman very quickly explained to the group, you know, the business advantages with our applications of having, say, the tool set layer separate from the application, from the presentation layer.
Absolutely. So, of course, the lowest layer is Yoke. That's where your enterprise systems, your email servers, your database servers are. And then if you look at on top of that, we have two layers. A typical product will give you one layer, which is what they are. That's the product. But with our toolset layer, we are separating the build, the toolset part of our product, with the application layer. One of the biggest advantage of that is in future, if you want to do an upgrade, we can just swap out the toolset layer and your application layer remains the same. So your supplier are used to 10 years of using the same portal. You don't want to make a change for them because Microsoft is phasing out SQL Server. We will not tell you to upgrade the whole product. We'll just swap out the toolset layer. The supplier will not even know that they are running everything on a newer technology now. The toolset layer also gives you tools like all those services, the processes, so that if you want to do an enhancement, we are not changing the code for you. We are basically doing drag and drop to implement features right there in your application versus trying to change the code, recompile the code, and restart the application.
Once again, so much like JD Edwards.
So much like JD Edwards, yes.
You don't have to go back to JD Edwards when you create a new version of a program to have them recompile.
That is a very good way of putting it in. If you are JD Edwards company, you know that your programmers, your people, JD Edwards people can make a change using the JDE toolset without going to Oracle.
And 50% of our customers work with us turnkey. They have lean IT, but the other 50% of our customers want development ownership. They want to do their own customs. They want to do their own upgrades. So just like JD Edwards, you've got developers learning object management workbench. You could do that with us too. So it eliminates what I call vendor lock, which many times you get with a programming language approach. I'm going to be focusing on vendor self-service, vendor onboarding, supplier contact and item update. That's like the pricing. We have other modules on the procurement side dealing with like PO requisitioning. I'm not going to show Easy Buyer. Windstream Communications, they have Easy Buyer. They're creating like $4 million in POs every day with our front-end application. Using price bidding, but with vendor self-service, this is some of the areas of functionality, working with purchase orders, a change, an acknowledge, an inquire, invoicing, the workflow. I'm going to show different use case scenarios. To get 100%, say, order acknowledgement compliance, you can't take a portal approach with the smaller suppliers, and we're going to be showing that. Easy Buyer. So that's a brief agenda, and let's get right to the demo. So with the demo, I've got a couple of browsers, and let me actually log out of here. This is our VSS demo environment integrated against our JDE E1 9.2 environment. You're going to be seeing these two a lot. I'm going to be logging in as admin. In a production environment, the emails are automatically queued up. They're batched. I'm going to be executing, say, the emails, and you're going to be seeing that. And then from a user perspective, over here, we have emails, which is very, very important. And I'm going to be showing the email functionality. And actually, let's close that. Let's start with JD Edwards and start from a user perspective. So with users, we believe in an integration philosophy that we call real-time synchronization. We used to, years ago, export out within a SQL export, address book and take a middleware approach with duplicate and synchronize. That's messy. So what we're doing here is if I go into admin and I look at, say, address book 4343 and do a search, you can see that there's no records found. So I am going to go into JD Edwards and enable 4343. So if I was to type in 4343, come up here to the who's who, that's where the email is. And so I'm seeing a Michael Scott. I'm going to come over here, and this is the trigger. I'm going to change contact name to VSS. And I'm going to do an accept on that, which means that if I come back here, do I have to run a batch? Okay, so if I come back here and do a search, there it is. This is Michelle Scott associated with 4343. They're enrolled. Now, we have processes where they don't even have to be enrolled and they can achieve some of the benefits. And by the way, when we implement this, we can do a mass registration. We can create a JDE, UBE, and register everybody or selectively. But I just wanted to show how we're natively working against JD Edwards. So we're not taking a duplicate synchronize. We're taking a synchronize. So from that perspective, let's go back here to JD Edwards and let's create sales order. So enter purchase order. Now what I'm going to focus on is email-based functionality. So for small suppliers, you don't want, like I showed you Amway, you don't want to have them to go into a manual and learn things. So in the smaller suppliers, you can't ever expect to get full compliance. Very strategic suppliers, yeah, I'm going to do that use case scenario. So this is a purchase order based on stock items. And I'm coming in here and I'm creating M30 and that supplier 4343, and let's create the purchase order, which is 5138. Jotting that now down. Let me add a couple of items. So I created that purchase order. Now I logged in as admin for a reason. I'm going to go into run batch jobs. So like I said, in a production environment, this would be auto turned on, this particular job. And I'm going to pause here because I want the technology side. That's why I have Jeremy, our product manager and implementer, and Suman, our chief technology officer. Suman, at a high level, explain what the folks are looking at right now when they're looking at these jobs.
Yeah, these are the batch jobs that can be automated based on the schedules. So the supplier notification email, normally you will want that email to go out in the morning, in the afternoon, maybe late afternoon, so that they can acknowledge, use that to send out the invoices or ship your orders. We are running it manually, just for the sake of the demo.
Okay, great. So I did execute that. Like I said, in a production environment, I wouldn't be doing that. So if I was to go back to my inbox, and there is that email, and this is the key, is an email like this, and they might be daily emails or emails triggered by action like a new purchase order. So what we're seeing here is that we're showing that 5138 was created for address book 4343. Now notice the format of the email. This is a section called New Purchase Orders, Revised Purchase Orders. There might be action on that. You want to cancel purchase orders, and to limit your liability, you're saying, hey, you've got to cancel, you've got to acknowledge these canceled purchase orders, or they're just going to keep showing up. ready to invoice purchase order. So we're basing it on the status code. So if I was to look, and let's look at the status code. If I was to look at that order in J.D. Edwards, and that was 5138. So you can see that the status codes, there we are, 220 and 300. So that basically says the order was created. It hasn't been acknowledged yet. So from the perspective of the user getting the email, now this is key to its simplicity, the KISS. Think about it. They get the email, they need to acknowledge it, they click on acknowledge. They're not logging into the portal, they're auto-logged in. They're into the body of the email right now, and all they have to do is hit acknowledge. Now, by the way, I'm going to be going through use case scenarios showing change PO, and you see some of that here is, you know, click to update. So you can allow suppliers to split lines, say due to transportation, we got a price change form there. Click to add comments. This is interesting. So what's a comment? It's the media object associated. That's the best place to keep an audit, because think about what this portal is. It's a, you know, you're basically creating a holistic environment between suppliers and portals, taking communication that was hard to manage, post-it notes and phone calls, and, you know, tying it to. So the comments are auto-generated. So based on action, we're going to generate it, or on top of the auto-generated comments that go into the media object of the PO, we can also allow suppliers and even buyers to add their generated comments. So I'm going to show a PO change in a little later. I just want to show the simplicity of acknowledging this PO from the perspective of Michelle Scott. So now at this particular point, if I was to go back into J.D. Edwards, and we can see that the status codes are now 300 and 370. So that's acknowledged status. So I'm going to go into the email right now. Now that it's acknowledged, I'm going to generate another email. This would be totally automated. And I want the supplier to invoice this purchase order. So I'm going to go back to my email system. And here's that. Just take a second. There it is right there. So it's on a batch. So you notice that under new purchase orders, the 5138 is not in there. If I come down here, ready to invoice purchase orders, I can, once again, simplicity, proactive emails with web services hyperlinks. And by the way, you notice I could, you know, log in. And Suman, I want you to explain that these web services can be very intelligent. So as an example, like logging in, we can make it, you know, work one-time use, two-time use, time stamp it for only, you know, 1 day of usage, things like that, right? So, but I want to get back to the flow here. I want to invoice it. So the user is now creating the invoice, and let's call it invoice 5138. Let's come here and put a date stamp on it. Let's go ahead and say that we want to invoice both line items. And once again, additional charges. This is our integration. Think of our portal. So this is coming from a UDC out of their J.D. Edwards, right, Suman?
Yes.
And that's the way it works. You know, if fields are limited by the number of characters, we built the portal to seamlessly work against E1. So I'm going to do a save and submit on this, and a draft invoice was created. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to show all invoices. And we can see the 5138 is waiting for receipt. And I could go into J.D. Edwards and show the status change, but you get the idea. So what I am going to do with J.D. Edwards is I'm going to do an enter receipts by PO and 5138 and do a find and select it. And receipt option one, select those lines. All right. So now if I was to look at all invoices, and this is reading directly from the statuses in J.D. Edwards. There we go, 5138, there's the doc ID, 3474. So if I was to go here, 3474, do a query.
Voucher.
Oh, voucher, thank you. I'm the sales guy, that's why I have my techies here, but you can see it's there. So we basically, touched on the procure-to-pay process flow as you have it set up in J.D. Edwards.
Yeah, so we basically waited for the invoice, purchase order to be received and did a behind-the-scene automated three-way matching. Because this was an exact match, we don't need any manual intervention, and this can be all automated.
So now I'm going to do another purchase order, but I'm going to do a non-stock purchase order. So I'm going to come in here, and I am going to use the same branch plant, M30, use the same supplier, 4343, and let's go ahead and create the purchase order. And it's 5139. So now on this, the item number, let me put chair 5, unit cost at 100. Obviously, I want to make this a non-stock item, which I'm doing there. And, I went too far. The account number, M301469. I could do a lookup if I wanted. Let's add another item called desk. We'll do quantity 1. Let's make this $500. Once again, J. All right, so I created that non-stock. Okay, so with that, I'm going to send the email notification. Which would be, I'm repeating myself, automated in a production environment. And I am going to go to my email. Let me just close this down right here. So if I go back to my email here. So now this is the 5139 showing up as acknowledge, and once again, this is email-based, coming in here with these non-stock items, making it very, very simple. I do an acknowledge. Oh, maybe I didn't click the invoice.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything good.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, you're right, I just acknowledged it.
Yeah.
All right, I did the acknowledge. Okay, so there we are. Thank you. So here it is. So, and I am going to show the OCR and email invoice in just a second, but in this particular case, I'm going to do an invoice on 5139. Once again, note the invoice date. Select the two items and the quantities. Once again, I could add additional fees if I wanted to. So based on this, I should now be looking at, let's go back here for the supplier and look at all invoices. So 5939 is waiting for approval. So this is now going to Michael Ledesma, where Michael is now going to log in. There's that approval. And this is Michael making approve by now, if I was to go back to showing the invoices, let's do a refresh here. And it was waiting for approval. It's approved. And there's the doc number. So 3475, once again, 3475. There it is right there. It's in J.D. Edwards. So what I wanted to show was from a small supplier. I wanted to show the simplicity of proactive emails and be able to do things without knowing, you know, the sophisticated aspects of a portal. You're going to have large suppliers, more strategic suppliers. They're the ones that are going to be logging into the portal to do more, dealing with ASN and other areas of functionality. And so I wanted to touch on that. And so I'm going to come back to J.D. Edwards. This is a different supplier now. So this is supplier, it's large supplier 4319. And let's create the order. And I am going to do M001, say quantity 4. And let's just leave it at that. Now I'm going to execute the email. So the supplier's name is Aaron. So Aaron is, let me close out on the browser. So this is Aaron now basically recognizing that they have 540. They could log in directly, but let's go through a different use case. This isn't a small supplier where they want to do the processes such as acknowledgement and invoice purely from an email. They want to log in. So now Aaron is logging in as Aaron McCarthy, who's a supplier. And once again, you know, just I want to emphasize that, you know, that web service basically embeds, you know, everything involved with going to the URL and logging in. So at this particular point, Aaron could log in, and they could see there is 5140. Now let's talk a little bit about this portal from the perspective of a larger supplier. So we have POs. On top of our grids, we have filtering. So the PO number we're showing, and by the way, this is, think of this as status buckets. So this is inquiry. This over here represents shipped POs. And so we're bringing that up by status code, right, Suman?
Yes.
Okay. And so once again, those are simple buckets you can go to, or if you wanted to filter specifically on 5140 or any combination of dates, and you can see what's going on there. I just filtered down to that new PO 5140. View, if I wanted to view the PO, and once again, these web pages, 100% soft-coded. We work with you. What fields from the header, what fields from the line item details, even, and Suman, you can address this, even if they had data in F55, 56 tables, or even outside of J.D. Edwards, we can easily do joins and pull it in, right?
Yes.
But what you're seeing here is the supplier inquiring on this email, and if I was to go back and show the print button, so the print is some code that we have that we refer to as auto PDF create. So auto PDF create simply says, take a form inside of our easy process, our platform, create a form, populate it with header and line item details, and create a PDF. So this PDF was created on the fly. Now I want to contrast this. We work with a lot of companies and they have document management, Optio, create, bottom line create form, and it could be a BI publisher. So you might have TIFF files and PDFs. We can obviously associate with that. But a lot of people do like the fact that we can create these PDFs real time in an auto PDF create type process. And what I'm going to do at this point is go into the acknowledge bucket because that's what I want to do. I want to acknowledge it. I want to click on acknowledge. And so once again, if I wanted to split the lines, say for transportation purposes, or even split it and have two separate delivery dates, click to add comments. So this is a manual comment entered. And I'm just going to show that and show how it's going into the media object. I can come up here, I can change the promise date, and that's going to kick off, it's either managed by exception. A lot of companies want their suppliers to change the POs, and Jeremy, like at Amway, they're reviewing PO ledger details, and so they're doing more of a managed by exception, where another company might want an approval process for something like changing the promise date, right?
Right, yeah, those would be the two ways.
Okay, very good. So if I was to do an acknowledge on here, I'm going to move the status codes, and you've seen that already. Now let's go to J.D. Edwards. And Katie, what was the PO number on that again?
5140.
5140. So if I was to go to 5140, excuse me, and go to the detailed revisions, so the media object here, this represents the comments. So throughout the process, we're auto-creating comments. This manual comment entered is in conjunction with the manual created comments. Jeremy, just explain, like from the perspective of Amway, this having it in the media object is key to full audit control and once again, centralizing the information in one area, which is logical, the media object of the PO itself, right?
Right. Well, the Amway buyers and admin personnel have access to JDE as users and don't necessarily want to have to log into the portal to do their work. So it's critical that the data is stored in JDE so they have the ability to go in and see what's happened.
Very good. So now Aaron is in here, and Aaron now, that PO has been acknowledged. So I'm gonna go into something called ship. So that's 5140. So the ASN process, in fact, let me show this. An ASN process can be very, very involved. Like at Amway, where they have pickup functionality, right?
Correct.
And it's something like this: 4242, going next, adding POs. So coming here and saying add it to the request. So we're adding the POs, and then we go next. And I believe that at Amway they have a number of different forms that are now, the ASN form itself that are being showed. So we have things like temperature, yes, we have, even on this form here, there's some cubic logic embedded in the fields, but Amway has various in different forms, right?
Right. All of this is to collect a form that will be sent off to request transportation for the POs that you're trying to select here.
Okay. And the point is, an ASN process can be very involved like this, or for many companies, it's as simple as it's at a status code, we're ready to take it to ASN, and we're simply only concerned about, say, putting a tracking number, and let's do a different number, that on it, and say ship. So I'm showing the 2 degrees of something that's very detailed and elaborate for ASN versus something where it's just, once again, status code update. And if I look at that order in J.D. Edwards, let's go to that order detail 5140, and that if we go to the detailed revision on that, and we could see the status codes are now at a ship status, and there it is right here. So Suman, it's in reference, but we could put it anywhere, right?
Yeah. The tracking number, reference is a good place where at the line level, a supplier can comment at different tracking numbers or any kind of specific reference you want supplier to comment on.
Very good. So with that, let's go ahead and close out this. And I'm going to go back to the batch jobs. I'm going to generate another email for this supplier 4319. And I'm going to show some OCR functionality now. Come back here to my email. And this is 4319. And so there's that order, 5140, ready to invoice. I was clicking on invoice that takes us to the body and allows you to manually invoice. I did that with 4343, a Michelle user. I'm actually going to do an email right now. And let me select, say, a PDF. And let's go ahead and attach that PDF and do a send. Now, Suman, that OCR process is on auto, so it's automatically going to be.
So we have the vendor portal we have has a batch job which listens on an email at an email or at a folder for all incoming supplier invoices, and then it matches against various available templates, which then can be parsed into compared with the PO and automatically creates the invoice for you.
So there it is right there. PO 5140 has been submitted, and I'm going to refresh the screen. Now it's been queued. So this is the statuses representing inside the portal, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then if we do it, waiting for receipts. So that 5140, if we go back to our batch jobs here, Suman, is it history?
Yes.
So there it is right there. So explain what, and this is like a third-party OCR software that we embedded.
Yeah, it's OCR. So our platform supports OCR. Those are services, one of the services you have. And basically, this is where I just talked about. It's listening for incoming supplier PDF which you can be scanning, paper invoices to it also, and then it basically creates the match that with the purchase order, and now it's ready for receive. Once you receive it, it will automatically create a voucher for it because because it's a perfect match.
All right, so let's do the last step, and let's go into enter receipts by PO, and that was 5140. And do a find on that, select it, come here, do an option 1. And if I come back here, and once again look at the invoice status, there it is right there. It was a success. So that was received in J.D. Edwards, and I could go into J.D. Edwards and show this. You saw me do that before. Want to show other areas of functionality. Katie, any questions from the group yet so far?
Not right now.
Okay.
But definitely with 10 minutes left, get them in right now so that we can answer them.
All right, and let's go ahead and show the vendor onboarding portion of the functionality. So with that, and this is, we got vendor onboarding working from our PO requisitioning. And with PO requisitioning, stock, non-stock, punch-out items. So with that, let's do a requester. And we'll show vendor onboarding. So adding a new vendor in J.D. Edwards. And Katie, be sure to send, Fox presented this at Collaborate 2 months ago, and we recorded the session, and it's realistic. This isn't as realistic. So let's do a vendor name here. So this is Supplier, a webinar, June 1, 2, 3. Now, once again, the supplier name, we make sure that we match up with J.D. Edwards. There's a 30, I believe it's 30 character limit in J.D. Edwards, so this is 30. Search type, this is working against the UDC tables and selecting a vendor. Remittance address, let me just go ahead, state, it's not Alabama, I'll leave it Alabama, it's Illinois. And once again, what else you want to add in here, for required fields with a vendor. I could choose a file here. And give it a name. And I could come down here and simply do a submit on this. So this is a workflow process for creating a new vendor. And Fox talks about how, like, if it's for banking information, if it's out of North America, it's wire transfer information. If it's in America, it's ACH. If the vendor selects, and this is, Fox has the vendor doing this, the initial form. If the vendor selects, some type of hazardous material, it's routed one different way. A government, a procurement, another different way. So this is being sent to manager. And if I was to log out here, and log in as manager. Now, when we work through an approval process, our workflow, very intelligent. You can, auto-escalate it, co-escalate it, delegate it. So just, a lot of functionality. Companies like Fox, they've selected us because they have very complex workflow that J.D. Edwards couldn't handle, 9 levels deep, simultaneous workflow processes converging back, say, to payroll for final submission.
So while you're doing this, Doug, someone just asked, who would be entering in this information? Is it the supplier or the employee?
Yeah, Fox has it where the supplier does it. Absolutely. But it could be, it could be either, right?
It could be either, yes.
Now, by the way, notice that these are locked out. Manager cannot change this, and we can see here that there's, we can see the information. It's the requester that started it. I'm at manager. So if I wanted to add a comment here, approved by manager, and then do an approval on this. So let's log out. And log in as AP user. Now, AP user, it's going to look different. AP user, you set up the roles and the permissions at the data field level. So the form is going to look different for AP user, where they can actually go in and based on what requester entered, maybe they want to change the name from June 123 to 123 4 5 6, or the other fields here. So with that, add comments, approved by AP user. So we're going to go through one last final approval process. And let's log out. And it's AP manager. And with that approval, we will be creating the address book record. We do a lot of record automation projects. Item master is one of them. Customer, we talked about vendor onboarding here. So we do a final approval. Now this environment is pointing to our other JDE. We have different environments. So that's 558.493. It's created in JD Edwards. If I come here, 593.493. Session expired, of course it did. This is an older version of JD Edwards. And what was the record again, Katie?
558.493.
So we do a find there. And all the information is there. If email, we go to who's who, phone number, that's all there. If I show, and we're running out of time, but if I was to show, say, the perspective of, say, AP user, we can also do a change, and we get the emails. And by the way, all those emails were generated, and that's a good point that I want to make, is that I've been showing this from the portal perspective. So address change. So you can do an address change, and it's gonna, you select the fields, it's there. But the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is with these emails, and this is what Fox mentioned, is managers are doing this from their smartphone. With, as an example, approve, deny, request more information. So once again, the whole idea, and you're seeing the new vendor request, the new vendor being created. web services to auto login. So the emails are very much focused on this. There is another area, and what I'm going to do, Jeremy, is for the last couple of minutes, Jeremy or Suman, who wants to show like the SEIU?
I can do it quickly.
Okay. So if I was staff, so this is like a price management between the vendor and the supplier.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Just very quickly, I kind of had this open, but the idea here is that as a supplier, I can go in, I can see all the items that I offer to whoever the parent company is or my buyer needs, and I can see them in their system. So this is all coming straight from JDE. This is the quantity break table combined with the item branch for me as the parent supplier. So I've gone ahead and impersonated somebody. I'm in as an admin. I can see all the items that they're offering. And I have the option to go in and just select which items I want to do a price update on. As you can see, currently there's a bunch of quantity break zeros. I can see my current price for them and the freight terms for each.
And there's also an Excel upload option, right?
Right, I was going to get into that up here. So I have the ability to download my template as a button here. I can then do all the same changes. I can add new price breaks. I can do pricing changes and upload it back to the system, and it'll go ahead and create the same type of request that I'll create if I did it manually through the portal here. So I've gone ahead and I've already selected 4 items to move forward with, just to kind of speed this up. So that gets added to the request, and I can add more if I want to, but I'm going to go ahead straight into the request that gets created. So here I have a request number created. My user created it. Then I have the ability to go ahead and edit. I can change the effective date to whatever I want. This would be when it goes into effect. The expiration date is 5 years in the future by default, but very easily we can add in the ability for them to choose. If I need to, I can add more items into the form. I have an Excel download here for grabbing the data for whatever reporting I need to do. I have a few quick tools here that allow me to just quickly update the prices if I want to. So if I want to give it an increase, it'll go ahead and update those prices for me automatically. I have the option to save the form, so if I'm working on it but I need to go check on something, come back later, I can definitely do that. I can go ahead and add price breaks if I need to. This will just bring up a new form that will go ahead and let me change the quantity, add a quantity break or whatever I need to do. And then I have the option to remove something if I've added it accidentally. In addition, I have attachments that can be added, and these work at approval flow level. So if I'm a supplier adding an attachment, the buyer and everybody above me in the approval flow will see it. Alternatively, if I'm the buyer adding attachments, the supplier won't see it, but everybody above me in the approval flow will see it. And this is a security level associated with that. And lastly, I need to put in a justification for the price increase that'll get passed down through the chain. Everybody can see the comments associated with it at their own security level that they're supposed to see. So this is kind of quickly the whole supplier item update piece. From here, once I save and submit, my buyer will get an email and they'll be able to view this data. They'll actually come into their own screen, which I apologize I didn't have open just yet, but I can quickly flip over to it. So the admins have their own view. They can kind of see the request coming into the system. And when they do, they'll see this whole price breakdown. This actually is only a one-line example. I could perhaps find a better one. Let's try this one. There we go. So it'll break down every item that was added to the request and give me a whole bunch of information as the buyer. It gives me my open quantities that are currently in the system. It'll give me my forecast quantities that are stored in the F3411 table in JDE. It'll start doing math for me based on the variances that were put in. So if the cost goes down, I'll go ahead and get those numbers. Or if they go up, I have the ability to play with this if I'd like. So if I want to say that I know in the future my open quantities are going to go up or our forecast quantity is going to go up, I can go ahead and do that as the buyer. And I have the ability to hit the update cost button at the end, does a whole recalculation, builds my approval flow based on the total cost impact here, and starts sending emails out to complete the approval flow. So if it hits a certain threshold, it'll go to my boss and my boss's boss, et cetera, up the line, based on how it's set up in JDE. Once it's fully approved, then the the supplier will get an email saying it's been fully approved. There's clarification and deny buttons in there as well as we go through the process. But once it's all approved, the buyer will get an email saying, now you can go in and update the open price POs that are currently in the system. They have a form they can go through. They just select the POs. They go ahead, hit submit, and it'll go ahead and update the prices of the items to the new price that was submitted through this form. We're kind of very quickly walking through the intricacies of this system. It's definitely a bit more complicated, but with only a few minutes, that kind of gets us through it.
And that's a good way of recapping this webinar. We are not able to get into the detail. I didn't get into a lot of detail with, say, PO change, approval process. Hopefully you got the idea, because I did show some examples of a workflow approval, but there's a lot of detail here. But what we wanted to emphasize is that we can achieve 100% say order acknowledgement process or achievement for your suppliers with a combination of suppliers only working from proactive emails, clicking, no training involved, approving it, creating an invoice, doing a ship and putting the tracking number in it, very, very easy. Or the last use case scenario where with supplier 4319 and some of the further detail that Jeremy talked about with managing price. The portal also allows, going into the address book and allowing suppliers to update their address, phone numbers, with or without approval process. It's designated at the field level. So we tried to cover a lot at the high level. We'd love to engage with you. Once again, being a platform application, we run into the realization the companies for spend and procure-to-pay, they have company, industry, marketplace nuances that require the personalization based on their requirements. It's very, very easy for us to do. We can deploy this quickly. Everything, we've got the integration. Jeremy was talking about some of the fields in J.D. Edwards. Jeremy fully developed the Amway deliverable that we've touched on as far as the case study. So with that, thank you very much. Katie, was there questions? I should probably ask that.
Not right now.
Okay. We will follow up with the PowerPoint and finding out if you'd like to engage at a more detailed level with personalized demos to you and your team. So based on that, thank you, my team, for your participation, and thank you all the J.D. Edwards companies that attended. Have a great rest of the day. Bye now.